Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast brought to you by Briar-Greaves Insurance. Protecting your assets starts with a company you can count on. So whether it's auto, homeowners, flood, boaters, or business insurance, Briar-Greaves Insurance are the best people in the business to work with. Visit briargreavesinsurance.com or give them a call at 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166. Happy Wednesday, everybody. We have another fun show in store. Bringing some heavy hitters this week. We had Trevor Sikkema yesterday. Joining us today from Fox Sports is Greg Auman, one of our trusted colleagues, the best in the business at what he does. Very excited to have him on. We have a special announcement for tomorrow's show as well, but we're going to continue to cover the Bucs draft. A pretty wild day with Jason Light becoming a media darling, talking everywhere, and also talk about the rest of the NFC South. So a lot to get to on today's show. I'm your host, Matt Matera, and as I just mentioned, joined with me from Fox Sports is Greg Auman. Greg, thank you so much for joining. How's it going?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on. I hope you're doing well.
Yes.
It's always fun post-draft. We spend so much time building up to the draft. I don't mind having a couple days where there's actual picks to talk about and teams. So happy to talk and catch up on a fun weekend.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because, we spend so much time. We're at the Advent Health Training Center during the season, but the draft, it's almost like a marathon, especially that Saturday when, there's only a few of us left really covering every single thing. So it's nice to have that Sunday to kind of reflect a little bit and kind of, let it marinate a little bit more, what we liked, what we didn't like, how we kind of, saw the whole league go about it. And funny enough, you were just on a little over a month ago, kind of preparing for the NFL draft. So it's great to get you on the other side as well. Let's start with, of course, the hometown team, the main reason why everyone's here, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. First round pick, Emeka Egbuka, I think comes as a little bit of surprise, but at the same time, we can understand the thought process behind Jason Light. Just what was your initial reaction when you saw the Ohio State wide receiver going to Tampa Bay?
I like the surprise aspect of it. I mean, it's one of those where we put so much time into these things to still get surprised and really to you look at these like mock draft databases and like nobody really mocked Emeka to the Bucs.
Yeah.
I think there were people that were persistent in picking receiver for them. And I kind of understood why. At first, it was like the what if Godwin leaves in free agency type explanation.
For sure.
And then, after March, after he's re-signed, you still saw that. And I think I kind of rationalized it in the context of like, if a talent like a Tet McMillan falls all the way to 19, if the top edges aren't there, if Campbell isn't there, if all those things happen, then it would make sense. And it's neat to now what we know after the fact is that, this is one of the guys they were really on, and they, top 10 on their board. Not many people where if it got to them, they weren't even going to take calls, weren't even going to think about moving down. But then to see him, I just didn't do a good enough job of learning about Emeka in the draft process, in that to see him on and off the field, it's Chris Godwin all over again is what it is.
Yeah.
And it makes it all the more amazing they got Godwin in the third round when they got him. But size, speed, body type, willingness to block, physicality, and then just character and demeanor and maturity off the field. Again, it's high praise to compare somebody to Chris Godwin. I'm not saying he'll be Chris Godwin.
Right.
I'm just saying he reminds you a lot of him, especially when he came out and just sounding like a 25-year-old when he's 22 and being able to do a lot of things they like. And it's, I think we look at positional needs and probably put a little too much stress on that. And it's kind of encouraging. And if anything, it speaks to how the Bucs, I feel like the Eagles are doing a good job right now of having a roster that's so loaded. They can just take risks. They can take guys that aren't positional needs just because they like amassing talent. And if it means you trade your quarterback to the Browns and you just get another quarterback, that's great. So that speaks well to me for the Bucs and their confidence. There are some uncertainties on the defensive side of this team and depth chart wise, maybe even starter level concerns. So I think for them not to have scrambled and reached for a linebacker or a safety, I think it speaks well to how much they like Tyke Smith and how much they like a healthy Servassier Dennis and all those kind of things. And the idea, you can see all those things and go, no, we're good. We're going to go ahead and upgrade, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 3. And it's a pick that you maybe scratch your head at initially, but I think especially if you look long term and you think that Chris Godwin, it isn't an absolute certainty he's going to return to be 100% Chris Godwin. And Mike Evans is 31, and this could be his last year, to where all of a sudden, okay, maybe he's wide receiver 2. And if things go well beyond that, wide receiver 1 in a couple of years. So no, it's one of those where I think, again, I like the surprise aspect. I like to think that even if you cover a team as closely as you try to, they can still throw a curve and still do things you don't necessarily expect. Even if you saw the position coming, I really didn't think it'd be Ibuka.
Yeah, it's definitely an insurance policy. There's no doubt about it with the Godwin situation, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Jason Light addressed that today on the Pat McAfee show. And while it is surprising, it's not anything different than what Tampa Bay does, which is just pick the best player that they have on their board. I mean, I think you were tweeting about it as well, where, some people were angry at first, like, why didn't they go defense? They have all these issues on defense, and specifically inside linebacker. But only 4 inside linebackers went in the top 100. So why are you going to reach to get a guy that isn't a fit, that might, flame out after a season or two, where, you can get a guy that maybe isn't going to play right away. But at the same time, I don't know if you've seen the show Succession. I'm a big fan of it. But I had the little piano intro in my head talking about Emeka Egbuka because when you think about it right now, we don't know how much longer Mike is going to play for, but the more he keeps getting 1,000 yards and the more he keeps moving up that touchdown all-time ranking list, he's going to keep playing. But let's just say Mike, he has one more year left on his deal. Let's just say he signs like another 2-year deal or whatever the case may be. Even if Mike plays 3 more seasons and Chris Godwin's contract is a 3-year deal, a club option for the last year deal,
right,
and Jalen McMillan's contract would still come up at that same time because he's on a 4-year deal after playing last year. You still have Emeka Egbuka for 2 more seasons to presumably be your number 1 guy. And I thought it was so funny, too, his press conference the next day. We talked a little bit about how he's a physical guy. He will go and block, which is just like Chris Godwin. I love when he got asked about his strength and his weaknesses, and he's like, oh, sometimes I overdo it when I block, or I go too hard with it, and sometimes I'll kind of miss the target. If that's what he thinks is a weakness for him, that's not too bad for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Right, absolutely. And again, they were talking about, I forget who was writing this, but somebody was talking about how it's kind of that Rams thing where, again, if you have strong blocking receivers, it's like even if you're in, it's kind of like 1.5 personnel. It's kind of like you have a receiver on the field, but he's blocking as well as you would expect a tight end to. So not only does that make it harder to anticipate run pass tendencies, you're just going to be better downfield in terms of they're both, Godwin certainly is, and I think they hope that Egbuka is a guy that will make that block that lets Bucky turn a 4-yard gain into a 14-yard gain. It's that one miss that gets him to the second level and lets him get to that speed. And that's, I think sometimes we only think about the impact that a receiver makes in terms of catches and yards and touchdowns. Right. But I do think there's that indirect benefit where he's making other people better, and sometimes we only think of that with the receiver in terms of they're going to shade to his side. The guy on the other side is going to get single coverage. But I think this is a case where if you watch him, I'm telling you, again, a willing blocker, a selfless blocker. And honestly, I think it's somebody where I think he can get stronger too. If you watch his highlights, especially freshman year highlights, he caught 1 million passes freshman year. It looked like he wasn't physically the same. So I think he's already shown some physical development to get bigger. He's not a size concern at all.
Right.
But again, the idea of him getting in an NFL weight room, building on what he has, could be a real strength for him in terms of being just a physical guy who isn't huge, but is willing to go across the middle of the field, is physical with corners, can block and help the run game too. So no, like I said, not anything I really thought about much at all. I was looking, it was cool. The one guy who mocked Egbuka to the Bucs pretty consistently was Bucky Brooks. And Bucky's on our staff at Fox. He's on our NFL Zoom with us. So we get to listen to Bucky, and he's super sharp and well-connected. And I haven't talked to him yet to see, is that just one of those, darts lucky kits, or did you have intel in January and February that they really liked him? Because a lot of people thought Egbuka was second half of the first round, maybe not as high as 19. We saw some teams that would have, Atlanta or Arizona, something like that, taking him. But it was neat to see nobody has him. And he had him in a January mock and a February mock, which is even I guess maybe there's some Godwin thinking there probably. If he left, it would make sense to get a receiver. But no, interesting and fun. And like I said, now you want to see him in rookie minicamp. You want to see how, how he looks in person, all those kind of things.
It's so funny how the mock drafts change, and understandably so, where like free agency comes around. And I think a lot of us in the Tampa Bay local media kind of thought there was a good chance Chris Godwin was going to come back to Tampa Bay, just based on the track record of how if the Bucs want to keep their guy, they end up keeping their guy. But I understand from a mock draft standpoint, you have to prepare for that. Another thing Bucs fans were joking about, going back to the blocking thing, is that they want to see a 4 wide receiver set where Chris Godwin and Emeka Egbuka are the lead blockers for Bucky Irving on a play, which I think would be very funny. Bucky Irving's a happy guy right now, too, because we'll stick with wide receiver. They drafted his buddy Tez Johnson in the 7th round. So they bookended wide receivers, one in the 1st and then one in the 7th. I mean, you want to talk about electric press conferences. I think he had the most standout one in his Zoom with the Bucs media on that last day.
Yeah, so much energy. It's one of those where you look back and these little guys, these 155-pound guys are almost always going to make up for it with energy and enthusiasm.
Yeah.
You have to be a confident kid to be 154 pounds and want to go at people that are 50 pounds bigger than you and trying to hit you, basically. So, like I said, I was really. Did I lose you?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, good. Sorry. A little hesitation here. The thing about Tez that I liked, I was in Mobile and I saw you guys in Mobile at Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to Lindsay Rhodes, who I do a lot of fantasy football hits with on the radio. And Lindsay works for a site called Sumer Sports. And she's telling me, like, she walked up and she's telling me, you got to keep an eye on Tez Johnson. Like, by their metrics, kind of their RAS type metrics, literally the number 1 receiver in the history of them recording draft prospects.
Wow.
Single number 1, most athletic in terms of just elusiveness, size, speed. I mean, he's tiny. But then as she's talking about that, it's one-on-one drill. And like one-on-one at the Senior Bowl, receiver and DB is almost unfair because it's just the DBs, they have no help from anywhere.
No help, no safety coverage, no pass rush.
It's like an 80% to the offense type drill. But Tez was just destroying people, like getting ridiculous. I mean, he thinks he's the best separation receiver in the draft. That's the kind of confidence he has. And again, if you're 155 pounds, I understand why you want to get away from the people that might hit you. Yeah. So it's neat to think about in that, like, when they take Egbuka, you're sitting here thinking like, okay, wow. So now your top 4 set, you're kind of wondering about Shepard getting $500,000 guaranteed because he's on the bubble now. Palmer certainly underperformed with all the injuries last year. Don't have 11 catches all year. He's on the bubble. Raheem Jarrett's there. Yeah. Cam Johnson's there. Ryan Miller's there. So you got about 5 guys now probably competing for 2 spots. It's talented enough where I wonder if they'll look at keeping 7 and having that 7th be maybe a guy that they don't even necessarily dress, where you can just kind of stash somebody that you might not be able to get through to practice squad and do that. That wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, Tez is exciting, enthusiastic, super optimistic.
Yeah.
If you think about like a Bucky little brother, every bit as confident, really good in the open field just to make people look bad. Not just make them miss, but literally make them fall out of their shoes on the field. That's what he did. And it's just a deep group. I mean, it's like, I think they cut Tanner Canoe. I think they cut Marquez Callaway.
They did,
but, you look, again, you got Will Shepard in red. There's a rookie. There's guys that really like Will Shepard as a guy that, again, was kind of lost in that Colorado offense, but put up good numbers. And again, is another guy who, if he's not on a practice squad here, will probably be on a practice squad somewhere else. So there's all kinds of depth. That receiver battle for 5, for 6, 7, if it exists, will be a lot of fun because it's just going to be guys making plays in preseason, first half of preseason games, second half of preseason games. It'll be fun to see.
Yeah, you kind of beat me to the punch. No, you're totally fine. That's what makes you a fantastic guest is, just kind of looking at this wide receiver room. Obviously, we can pencil in the front 4 with Mike, Chris, Jalen McMillan, and now Emeka Egbuka. And, it's not often that a 7th round pick is lobbying for a starting position. In this case, kick returner or punt returner. But yeah, it's going to be tough to see. There's so much talent that you would think maybe the Bucs take 6. But then I'm wondering how many they keep on the practice squad. Because I think like Cameron Johnson's a great example of somebody that was absolutely electric in training camp last year, but he couldn't stay on the field. He had a couple of injuries that kept him out, and we never really got to see him return kicks and punts. So, that kind of derailed a couple of things. Trey Palmer, I think a lot of us are kind of waning on because we're waiting for him to turn that corner a little bit, and he hasn't. And in a weird way, I feel like Sterling Shepard might be the safest because let's remember he started last season on the practice squad and he's buddies with Baker Mayfield. And it's not that Baker's just going to be like, hey, you got to keep Sterling, like no ifs, ands, or buts. But typically, you like to keep the quarterback happy and healthy, but happy. And I think that kind of means like, if anything, keeping Sterling Shepard around on the practice squad. But yeah, no question. I think on the hot seat, even for the practice squad, are guys like Trey Palmer, Rakim Jarrett, players that have had kind of injury issues as well for guys that don't see the field that much either.
Yeah, if all those guys stay healthy, honestly, it's easy to see if they carry 6, 2 guys that get cut here on another team's 53, not just on a practice squad, but claimed and playing elsewhere. Just a talented group. Shep's a guy who had 30 catches last year, had some penalties, had some drops.
Yeah.
The challenge for these young guys, especially the rookies, is they have to earn Baker's confidence in such a short amount of time. Baker knows exactly where Shep's going to be on every route. They know each other in terms of route adjustment to coverage. Those new guys have to build that rapport. And you see Baker taking Ibuka out to brunch already.
Yes, that's so cool.
That's a first rounder. That's not an issue. They'll have chemistry. He's going to get lots of catches. But the young guys, again, Tez is a 7th rounder. There's no assurances he makes the roster. If anything, you're more likely to make the cut with the Bucs as an undrafted guy than you are a 7th rounder in the last couple of years. So, and then you have that cool thing where the Bucs sometimes will know somebody's good and they almost actively don't play them in the preseason because if you play the guy you have to cut and he has a 75-yard touchdown, he's not on your practice squad anymore. He's going to get claimed somewhere. So I definitely see them sometimes kind of actively hiding the player last 2 weeks of preseason because they know the more they show, the more they're at risk of losing somebody promising.
Yeah, they had some smoke screens this year with the draft of not having top 30 visits for certain guys they drafted. So, yeah, it would make total sense that they do it in the preseason as well. Some of these other picks, we don't need to go, position by position, but Benjamin Morrison in round 2, Jacob Harris round 3, and then David Walker, the outside linebacker round 4, followed by Elijah Roberts in round 5. The outside linebacker, edge rusher who presumes and is projected to be a defensive tackle for the Bucs, and of course Tez Johnson we just talked about. But curious your thoughts about the corners, specifically Benjamin Morrison with the hip injury. I feel like there's a couple of parallels to Antoine Winfield Jr. I get it, different positions. Antoine's a safety and a great one at that. But Winfield dropping to the 2nd because of some injury issues, and then we all saw what he did when he got drafted, winning a Super Bowl. I kind of see that with Morrison a little bit in terms of he dropped to the 2nd round because of his hip injury, which, as we've kind of learned, is something he dealt with since birth. But when healthy, he's a lockdown corner and could really be a game changer for this team in the future if he inevitably ends up becoming a starter.
Yeah, it made a lot of sense. You go back to his freshman year, I think he had 6 picks his freshman year. Has picked off good quarterbacks. I think he picked off Caleb. I think he picked off somebody else who's an NFL quarterback now. Has definitely stepped up, made plays. 9 picks in his 2 healthy seasons. And it sounds like, again, it's like they know so much more about these injuries than we do. So there's people that are like, you passed on Will Johnson because of injury concerns, but you draft a guy that missed 10 games and has bilateral hip issues, But again, it's to listen to him. I think it's something he's confident is behind him. I think having a workout last week where he can show them where he is physically now means there's less projecting. Jason makes it seem like they feel like he'll be there for the start of training camp at full go. No mitigation at all, able to do whatever he wants. I think they're going to be careful with him this month and next month in terms of OTAs and mandatory minicamp. But I think by the time we get to late July, should be fine. And if so, it's a steal. To look at him, again, he said they need ball hawks. This seems like someone that can do that. Has some inside-outside versatility. I think he's probably more naturally an outside corner. But again, I think cross-training is important just because this secondary has shown how injuries can kind of throw whatever plans you have completely out the window in a hurry. So if he's the 3rd corner to start the year, it's a little bit like Philly last year, where Philly had corners that were back. Cooper DeJean goes in the 2nd round. First 5 weeks of the season, he's barely playing defense at all. He's on returns. And then as he gets confident, as he gets to know the system, they're able to work him in, push a veteran and an established starter out of the way, and then, takes over from there. I'm not saying he's Cooper DeJean. I'm just saying that's a 2nd rounder who didn't start immediately, but was really an impact player and a big part of why they won a championship.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very curious about David Walker too, because you get some comparisons to Shaq Barrett, smaller size, played at an FCS school. With Shaq was at Colorado State, but with David Walker, I don't know what to totally make of this outside linebacker room just yet. And I think Chris Braswell is kind of the key to all of it, because we talked about Hassan Reddick the last time you were on the show as well, where if he has a great season, he might not be back because he might have, outplayed how much the Bucs would pay him. And if he doesn't have a good season, he's certainly not going to be back. So David Walker, I think, certainly has a pretty good chance to kind of rise up the ranks in this outside linebacker room, with Chris Braswell kind of being the key in all of it.
Yeah, it was cool. I got to talk to his head coach at Central Arkansas, a guy named Nathan Brown. I talked to him yesterday. And like just the sheer, the number for David Walker is 80.5 tackles for loss in college. And it's only in 4 years. It's not one of these things where it's diluted because he played 7 years of college football. The last 4 years, he has 80 tackles for loss. Okay. And it's small schools. So sometimes it feels like pesos and you have no idea. It's a big number, but it doesn't actually convert to much. Like the record in 1A football for most tackles for loss in a career is 75. And that's Khalil Mack. Okay. And he's got 80. And they were talking about how, again, the first year he's in D2, he's at, that's Southern Arkansas. Yeah. Southern Arkansas, and transfers up. There's a coaching change, transfers up to 1AA Central Arkansas. It was kind of neat. If you remember a year ago, like the Bucs really liked how Braswell was stuck behind, Anderson and all these stud pass rushers, and could have transferred, could have gone down a level to like an ACC school and started and had 10 sacks, and he stayed at Alabama. And I feel like Walker is the same thing, if maybe the inverse of that, in that Walker has 2 years at 1AA where he's got double-digit sacks, 20-plus tackles for loss. It'd be really easy to go, a MAC school or a low-end ACC school and go to a higher level where you can prove yourself. And he didn't. He stayed there because that's the school he wanted to be at. And I think there's a loyalty there that, again, speaks to kind of the character they're talking about in this draft. And it's not that transferring is always a sign of a weak character or something, but it was cool in that this guy, you have back-to-back years with 20 tackles for loss. You're the guy that every opponent is planning for and containing. And on every play, they know where you are, and they're chipping, and they're putting a tight end on your side.
Yeah.
And he did it again, and he had another year like that. So I just think the consistent production he had to just disrupt and be somebody who is constantly in the opposing backfield is something that maybe it doesn't happen immediately in the NFL. And they were talking even the night of the draft that maybe he's just a third round, like a pass rush specialist his first year or early on. But they really like him as just a guy that'll be a game changer. And it's kind of a neat compliment because Elijah Roberts, by comparison, is a bigger guy. He's definitely, they listed them both as edges, but I think Elijah is more of a down lineman, kind of in that Logan Hall, Will Golston type class. And he, again, you think about leading the nation in pressures the last 2 years, just constant. Anybody that's 292 pounds and can pull off wearing 5, as you see, it's not necessarily a big man's number. I know that I guess JTS was in 9 last year, so I don't want to say that's automatically a sign of amazing defensive line play, but there's just a speed to him, and some of the guys they got in the third day of the draft have that speed relative to size, to where, again, 292. I forget what his number was in the 40, maybe 477 or something like that, but just a better number than you associate with somebody that big. It'll be fun to see how they use him. They've got, again, I think the kind of the situational fits for this team make a lot of sense, even down to the lower rounds. The only one that's probably in jeopardy of not making the 53 is probably Tez Johnson. I think the rest are safe bets to make it. But it'll be really neat to see. I think this is probably, if you weren't already clear that they were moving on from Will Golston, I think this kind of made it clear, because this is a guy who, if you were to bring back Will Golston, would kind of step directly in front of Elijah Roberts and take his role. And Will had a great run. I just think it's one of those,
sure.
If you have a chance to get younger, you have to reset eventually, and he'll be there. And honestly, it's one of those where having Elijah there, if he does well, it's going to push Logan Hall. As
it does.
He's kind of hitting the contract year 2. So again, 5th round pick. It's hard to get anything. You think about Anthony Nelson as a 4th round pick and what he's done just to be here 6 years. If all you do is fill a rotational role, make a couple plays a year, you've done well as a 5th round pick. But I think they're really excited about what Roberts can do.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to how they use him with his versatility. And this team does need an influx of youth on the defensive tackle position, in my
Right.
opinion. Love Will Golston. He's always going to be remembered as a long tenured Buccaneer. Maybe not Bucs Ring of Honor, but he's going to be one of those guys where they should bring him back to Raymond James Stadium, show him in the crowd, and he should get a standing ovation. I think
Right.
that's that's the level that he should be. Speaking of Elijah Roberts, we're also very excited. He's going to be joining us tomorrow on the Pewter Report podcast. He'll be on for about 15 minutes to half an hour with Scott and I. We'll get to know him a little bit more, talk about his playing days at Miami and SMU, and how he feels becoming a Tampa Bay Buccaneer and playing with Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey. It's going to be Elijah and Kalijah on that defensive line. So very much looking forward to that for tomorrow's show. A couple other things with the Bucs draft, real quick. Greg, any pick from the Bucs that you would say you thought that was their best pick, whether it's from value or the player that they got? Anyone that particularly stood out to you that get your seal of approval?
Not huge. I mean, it's by the way, with Roberts, you got to ask him about Charlie Strong because he played for Charlie.
Yes, we have that on the docket.
Oh,
yes,
cool. Yeah, I didn't realize that or make that connection until after we talked to him draft night, so I didn't get to ask him. But I'm intrigued, and I would think, I think he had 1 sack for Charlie that year, which is kind of a rotational player, which is why he transferred to SMU. But I think Charlie would have to want to sign off on that. I would think
for sure.
A good relationship. In terms of value picks from here, I mean, Tez was a guy that, I mean, obviously size concerns can really hurt a guy in draft stock, but I mean, I definitely saw him in a lot of these 7-round mocks as a 4th-round pick, as a 5th-round pick. It's a big hurdle to clear is the size thing. And even if they, bulk him up, he's going to be 170, so that's going to be something to work against him. But the productivity in a high profile offense is certainly there. The right attitude, the special teams help. For him to stick, he probably has to have one of the return jobs. I think he had an 85-yard touchdown last year in a punt return. So that makes a lot of sense. I like that. I mean, those 7th-round picks are absolute flyers.
Exactly.
It's basically the guy that would be in your undrafted group that you think would be the hardest. Because again, a receiver, I'll be honest with you, an undrafted receiver, I would not pick the Buccaneers, right?
I totally agree.
Just on existing depth. If I were to rank the 32 teams that would be the toughest to breach as an undrafted receiver, that might be top of the list, So just to get him in, again, if you miss on a 7th-round pick, we can go through the names over the years. Some fun guys, some great guys, but not a high percentage. It's a 3-point shot, If it goes in, that's great. And then honestly, Morrison too. Morrison's a guy who you would see as a late 1st-round pick. I had thought he was in that weird tweener area where he's not going to be there. He's too high for 19. I don't think he'll be there at 53. So, made a lot of sense. And again, it seems like if you're going to take an injury risk, it's something that, has already shown progress with. It's not like it's all over his body. It's the hips that are the problem for the most part. And don't get me wrong. It's a big position where we talk about good hips and loose hips and all that kind of stuff. So you want to make sure he gets back to that. But again, everything you see so far, it sounds like he'll be able to get back to who he was his freshman year, making plays all over the field.
It does. And he's a passionate player. We all saw the viral video of, him getting drafted by the Bucs and talking to Jason and Todd. He was actually my favorite pick. I just think if he is healthy, I think he's going to work out great for this team. And
his dad is still the team chaplain of the Arizona Cardinals, which is cool. So,
that I didn't know, because I remember at the combine he was saying that his dad was teammates with Todd, and it was Todd's last year of his career with Washington, and it was his dad's first year. So
I want to say his dad only played like 4 games that year, but they would have been in the same meeting room all year. For sure. It was neat, Bowles. There's that. I really enjoyed the video with how emotional Benjamin is, just balling, right? And Bowles is just the whole like, hey man, relax, calm down.
Yeah,
tell your dad I said hi.
I'm so glad you said that, because on our live draft show, I said it's a great video. Don't get me wrong, I love his passion. But the funniest thing to me was Todd being like, "All right, like let's give it a break here, relax." And
he had this vibe of like, "Hey, we record these things, man. Just like this.
Like I'm trying to save you.
People are going to see this though."
Yeah. Todd never throwing his players under the bus.
But anyway, Bucs play the Cards this year, so I just like the idea of like maybe his dad being a little conflicted. You want to give him a good pregame prayer, but maybe don't beat him. Maybe just try hard. Nobody gets hurt. We're good with that.
Exactly. Both teams have fun, as some T-shirts say. Any hardcore Bucs fans know that Greg is the absolute best when it comes to breaking the news of undrafted free agent signings to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You have almost all of them every single year, year in and year out. And there was a lot of publicity this year with some of the undrafted free agent signings. There's no better way to start than with Desmond Watson. The Bucs actually made history as well because they have the smallest player in Tez Johnson at 154 pounds and the biggest player with Desmond Watson right now at 464. I know Joey Knight had tweeted out that he had lost some weight, so I'm not exactly sure what his official weight is now. But Greg, you being a former Florida Gator as well, what can Desmond Watson bring to this team? I mean, certainly stopping the run, but is it just a matter of like if he can move well enough at the NFL level?
It's funny when they did that. I texted Jason that I was pretty sure he was the first GM in NFL history to add 2 players on the same day. One of them 3 times as heavy as the other. But it was cool. I actually got to talk to Dez the week before, like when he was here for the Bucs local pro day, like anybody within a certain radius can go. He was there for it. And I was like, oh, wow. Like if he's here, it'd be really cool to write him before the draft. It's like I went, I'm a Florida grad, so we go to more Gator games where I certainly knew Dez. But took my boys to the bowl game. Gators played Tulane at Ray J.
Yep, that's right.
And they beat the daylights out of Tulane, but the single best moment in the entire bowl was they show Dez on the sideline. It's like a 3rd and 1. Game is completely over, but it's like the crowd just saw it and realized like they might put Dez in an offense. And it's very much the same vibe as Vita Vea on offense, where fans have been talking about this and asking for this for 4 years. And like, oh, wow, they're going to do it. And they went in and like just the stadium is so much more alive than they've been on any touchdown at any point in this bowl game. And they give him the ball and he rumbles. Yep. I get it. It's like 2 yards. Got the first down.
Right.
And then there was a moment at the goal line where it looked like it's going to get another one. And they didn't put Dez in. They put Marco Rubio's son in the game. Another walk-on. And it just didn't have the same feel. The stadium, he scored a touchdown, and it wasn't as excited as they were for 460-pound Dez Watson to get a first down on 3rd down. So anyway, met Dez, met him at a Starbucks after a workout here in Tampa. It was really cool to sit down with him. He's an extremely likable guy. Obviously, a big part of his success is going to be that picture's insane. That picture,
it's unreal.
It's neat that you're like, oh, that's neat that he picked up a 9-year-old that wandered onto the field. That's Tulane's quarterback.
Yeah.
And it's like picking him up like it's absolute nothing. But Dez knows he needs to lose weight, is making progress on that. And honestly had the right attitude. There are a lot of guys that are bubble guys and fringe guys on whether they'll get drafted. And I don't think he needed to get drafted. I don't think he had expectations of being drafted. Right. He was kind of like, hey, Dez is 22. So if you bring him in with the idea that you're going to get him on the right path physically, you're going to watch him learn and grow, not grow physically, but shrink physically. And if
shout out Jay Retcher says,
there you go.
It's actually a dance move. Dez is Dancing with the Stars Tampa edition.
Again, like if you get him down, if all he does this year is get himself down to 4 or under 4, it's a $250,000 investment. It's a $300,000 practice squad spot. Yeah. And he starts his clock next year, and maybe he's your 5th or 6th D lineman then. It's just a really cool thing. And it's one of those, I think everybody out there probably could stand to lose a little weight. So yeah, I totally get his whole thing.
I completely understand where he's coming from.
His whole thing to talk to him. I'm like, so what are the foods that, you're trying to cut back on? What are the keys for you? And he's like, pay at the pump, man. You got to pay at the pump. He's like, you go to stop your car and get gas. There is nothing good for you inside that gas station.
Yeah.
You pay at the pump. Don't ever go inside. He's like, if you're driving home on the interstate, there's no reason to get off the road. Wait till you get home and eat something healthy at the house. So now every time I find myself in a gas station, I just hear Dez reminding me that there's nothing healthy inside the gas station. I could do to drop a couple pounds, not a Dez level weight loss here, but yeah, fun one. Dez is easily the most fun story, but there's some really good ones. I wrote a story just Monday. Yes. This kid named Ben Shakwuma. There you go.
I want to ask you about that because it was a fantastic story, and I highly recommend to everybody to check out the story. But yes, please, sorry to interrupt, but
Oh,
yeah,
no, don't worry. You got the art loaded, man.
It was a really good story. So
Really cool story. Georgia State literally had not played in any football game at any level 2 years ago, which is just wild. Like, how is that possible? Moved to the U.S. from Nigeria at age 17, didn't play any sports in high school. I guess his end of his sophomore year at Georgia State, buddies, dude, you're huge. You should try out for the football team. Doesn't even know what position to give them to write down for what he plays. And it's like they told him, like, say defensive end. And the head coach is a guy named Sean Elliott, who's an assistant at South Carolina now. But Sean was saying how they literally had an assistant like run into his office, like, Coach, you got to come out and see this guy. And they said it's kind of like, you're like, which guy? And then, like, boom, the 6'6", 260 guy. And again, it's one of those where you'd think like, oh, great, started right away. It's like, no, it's 3 years, and it's loses a year to COVID. He's got to take some time off to help his dad after back surgery. It's 3 full years. He hasn't played anything at all. I don't know if I got the story out. The only thing that shows up for him before 23 is that he won the hot dog eating contest at Georgia State in 22. I was trying to figure out like what an impressive number of hot dogs to win for a college football team. It was only 9, which kind of felt like I'm not eating 9 hot dogs right now myself, but I'm not 200, 300 pounds either. Anyway, plays 2 games, only starts 2 games in 23, comes back and starts in 24, and is now he got good money from the Bucs. They gave him $300,000 guaranteed.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, a second. $300,000 guaranteed, which is a lot of money for an undrafted rookie, and pretty much locks him into at least a practice squad job. They don't have like a developmental tackle. Obviously, they have 2 great tackles that aren't going anywhere anytime soon. But it's good to have that guy you can develop and build. And if all he is a healthy scratch 9th lineman this year, and then a year from now he takes over for Charlie Heck as a swing tackle, and then you got a guy you can really develop.
Yeah, absolutely. Great value right there. I just put the story in the comments so everybody can go and check out that story as well.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, interesting. His his path to playing football was being a walk-on, so probably hit home if he steps into one of the walk-ons here in the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah, so what happened out there tonight?
We struck out at home with leftovers, then we remembered walk-ons.
What effect did the situation have?
Spirit soared. Nick took on a burger. Jen obliterated her ribeye po' boy. And speaking of spirits, Laura even scored a real tasty cocktail. She needed that.
Any lessons learned today?
Yeah. Head straight to walk-ons.
Scratch-made dishes, wall-to-wall TVs, craft beers, and cocktails. Walk-Ons for the win.
That's right. Shout out to Walk-Ons. There were 3 Walk-Ons in the Tampa Bay area. One over by Scott in the Wesley Chapel area, another in Lakeland, and one pretty close to Raymond James Stadium over in Midtown Tampa, not far from where I live either. Tons of great deals, fantastic food and drinks, awesome happy hour deals. And if you have a child, a loved one, somebody that is graduating soon, they can host your graduation party or cater it as well if you want to. There's plenty of room, plenty of fantastic food as well. Check out all the happy hour deals that they have, including on Wednesday and Thursday from 3 to 6 and then 9 to close. So eat like a winner and drink like a champ over at Walk-Ons 3 in the Tampa Bay area. Before we get to the other NFC South teams, one more guy we have to talk about real quick is Shilo Sanders coming to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Greg, I guess my question is, we heard Jason Light talk about, the Levante David model, and it seems like this year's draft, they really took a lot of guys that they like the character as much as they do the person. And, I'm not here to say negative things about the Sanders family. We all know the Shador story and everything like that. But I guess my question is Shilo comes in, the Sanders family is very polarizing with Dion in Colorado. They got camera people all over the place. From that aspect of it, I don't know if he's bringing them to Tampa, but in that aspect alone, it doesn't seem like a very Bucs type of signing.
Yeah, I think if I read things right, I don't know that he was somebody that was on their list as much as they called him, or they called the Bucs, I should say, and expressed the interest. And safety's a position where, the Bucs safety depth is nothing established right now. All Shilo has to do is beat out somebody who was kind of in the same boat a year or two ago, whether it's a Kayvon Merriweather or You got Marcus Banks in there. You had Rashad Wisdom, a lot of guys that haven't played. So, I mean, that if there's a fourth safety, if you will, if there's not two nickels or something, it's there for him. In the least, a practice squad spot would be reasonable. I mean, it's one of those where I think Dane Brugler had him as the 43rd safety in this class, and I think 21 got drafted. So it's not like he's even necessarily really close to be like, oh, should have been a 7th rounder. But it's intriguing. The guy can hit. If you look at his highlight reels, if nothing else, he's a willing hitter, a dangerous hitter. Some of these types, I mean, J.J. Roberts is another guy that, again, if you look at that depth chart, number 3, Izzian, is an undrafted rookie. So there's just not a lot of draft capital that's been pushed into this position where you got to beat somebody out because there's a big investment from the team. So I think that helps. It's almost the opposite of receiver. Again, if I were an undrafted receiver, I would not want to come to Tampa. If I'm an undrafted safety,
want to go to the Bucs.
Makes a lot of sense. And it's one of those where I don't know how they'll cross-train him, whether it's just strong and free or how he'll fit in. But, it's a nice thing to have somebody that prominent. There might be the circus of Dion coming to a mini camp practice or a training camp practice or something like that.
That'd be kind of fun.
I don't mind it. And it's one of those where
I like when, someone randomly pops up at practice. Like Ocho Cinco was there a couple of years ago with the Madden video game guys. So, I kind of like when there's a random sighting.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they've got Dino Tomlin. I mean, Mike Tomlin's son, Dino.
Yes.
Again, probably not an NFL player, but he'll be at rookie minicamp as a tryout player. It's a neat thing. It's the smallest bone to throw. If you want to say, wow, Mike Tomlin got to make his coaching start here in Tampa. We saw that with Culpepper's son. We saw that with Derek Brooks' son a couple of years ago. These are just minicamp nods. It's letting the guy say he had a weekend in an NFL camp. It's harmless. And it's a cool story. It's one of those where it's good people that this franchise has gained a lot from, and you want to help them out. And if it's just giving their kid a chance to have a weekend in the NFL, at least, I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, I wonder if there's like a little bit of a handshake agreement because like Todd has 2 sons playing college football right now. And I think his oldest son, I don't know how much more eligibility he has left, but I would imagine in the next couple of years, maybe he ends up with a practice with the Steelers or something like that, if wherever the case may be. But anyway, let's talk about this NFC South draft. Starting, I know we're not going in order of like when they picked, but the Atlanta Falcons, we're going by what place they came in last season. So Xavier Watts, I really wanted the Bucs to go and get, but they went with Jacob Harris, which is totally fine. What do you make of the Falcons draft class? Because they didn't have a lot of picks to begin with, and then now they don't have a first-round pick next year. They go with 2 edge rushers. I think Jalen Walker makes a lot of sense, but James Pierce, there's a good amount of character issues when Donovan Ezeraku was still available. Yeah. And, Mike Green, there's character issues as well. So he's kind of in the same category as James Pierce. But your overall thoughts about what the Atlanta Falcons did this draft last weekend?
Yeah. So like Atlanta, went outside the box last year with the Penix pick when they already had Cousins. So they've already made it clear they're not going to yield to the traditional unspoken rules and all those kind of things. Right. I love Jalen Walker at 15. He was a guy that I think a lot of people had going 8, going well ahead of them. So to have him fall to them, I thought that was really fortunate for them. And I thought they did a good edge has been their absolute need. It's been neglected long-term for a while. So I was really happy they did that this is what you need the most. And for them, it's always great when the best guy available or the obvious talent there lines up with your biggest positional need. So the Pierce thing is confusing in that, I mean, Pierce is a guy where there are people that would have had him lasting to 43 when the Falcons picked again. And for them to move again, to give up a 26 first-round pick to get a guy who, again, wasn't even necessarily the best edge available. They had Brugler was on a podcast I listened to yesterday, and Dane was having to stop himself from saying things too critical about Pierce in terms of the number of teams that did not have him on their board, that just weren't sure that he really cares about football, loves football. When Jason talks about making sure you love football, I think Pierce is kind of one of those guys. Doesn't mean he can't work out and be amazing. I do think it helps that they've double dipped. They've hit, I mean, their top 2 sack guys this year could easily be those 2 rookies. Okay. There's just not that much else out there. There's part of me that wonders if they try and use Walker a little bit as a linebacker, because Walker's a little bit of a tweener where he could be an inside backer that pass rushes, kind of like people saw Jahad Campbell a little bit. And they could still use help at linebacker too. So I hadn't really heard anything specific to that, but I wonder in camp if they give one of them a look, give Walker a look as a traditional linebacker instead of an edge. I was with you, Xavier Watts. I think the idea of having teammates in Tampa was enticing for whatever, like a half hour before he went off the board there. So no, good draft. I mean, you only have 5 picks to start with, and they've lost picks for various reasons and trades. So this wasn't going to be a hugely impactful class, but it's one of those where it's kind of like last year. You look at the Penix thing, and nobody liked Penix, and they were just destroyed across the board last year.
They were.
Them taking Penix now.
Yep.
Looks smart in that none of us were thinking that Kirk Cousins would implode and be gone before his first year there. And that was their stopgap, and their insurance policy was, hey, let's have 2 quarterbacks. So that actually looks pretty smart now. It's the same people that gave way too much money to Kirk Cousins in the first place. So you're kind of digging yourself out of a hole that you dug.
Yeah.
But again, if they're better in the pass rush, I think this is a draft that could work well for them. They still have a lot of needs. Their offense, the only thing they did for that offense was a 7th round tackle.
Yeah.
So just not a lot. There's not a lot of firepower to that. Safety was a need. They addressed that. But, if those edges don't hit for one reason or another, you lose the entire draft class really quickly with something like that. So
what do you say what do you say their biggest need on the offensive side is? Is it just that offensive line?
No, I mean, they've put a lot of money in their offensive line. They have 2 great running backs. Depth at receiver is still a little bit of a concern. You think about some of the moves they made last year that didn't necessarily work out. I think, honestly, I think Darnell Mooney probably clicked better than most people thought he would as a 2 there. So you got really 2 solid ones in London and Mooney. Not a whole lot that's going to hit you afterwards. Tight end, obviously Pitts. They're going to figure out this year whether he's a guy they give a whole lot of money to or a guy they just move on from. But he hasn't been the same since he's been hurt.
Right.
So, offensively, this is they're going to sink or swim on how well Michael Penix steps up as a first-year starter.
Sure.
He got 3 games. You got a little bit of a sneak peek, but that's dipping your toe in the water. We don't know who he is. There were definitely moments that were really promising within those 3 games. So, if he clicks, he's going to have 2 great receivers and 2 great backs behind him and a good offensive line. They put a ton of resources in to keep. Center's probably a little bit of a concern just because they lost Drew Dalman. But it's one of those where it's you look at when you see these rankings of draft classes, like it's impressive to me that the Bucs are getting A's and getting ranked. Somebody had, SI maybe had them as the number 1 most improved team in the draft.
Yeah.
And if you can do that when you picked at 19, that's really strong. That's not what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
That ranking should go to the teams that were in the top 5 or had an extra first round pick or had 3 third rounders or something like that. And the Bucs didn't have anything extra at all. They just made a lot of picks that people like. So the Falcons, unfortunately, had to borrow next year's first round pick just to get into the conversation of getting impact from this draft. I get it. Like if they don't do well this year, that GM, that coach aren't going to be the ones missing that 26th first round pick. So there's some urgency there. There's some, I don't want to say panic, but there's definitely some win now. Let's go ahead and take a little extra to try and make something happen this year.
There's no doubt about it that the fate of the NFC South in terms of everyone fighting for, to get on the same level as the Bucs, a lot of this hinges on what Michael Penix Jr. Does this upcoming season. Do you think there's any type of like trickle down effect in the organization as far as like a morale type of thing with everything that went on with Jeff Ulbrich and his son and the prank phone call to Shador and everything like that?
Yeah, I don't think so. It's definitely not a cool thing. It's one of those where, again, like we were talking about, they're treating it like this data breach, like you'd think like missile codes were compromised or something here. I don't, even if it's on again, like my laptop's open here at the house. So if my kids were to see something, if my kids get in my phone, there's lots of phone numbers in my phone. Right. And you want to trust that your kids aren't going to prank call a coach or a GM or a player or other reporter. But again, that's the worst nightmare is that, you love your kid, you want him to do the right thing and instead he steals a number off your laptop. And not
It's
only
on video. Yeah.
not only pranks it, but like lets video of him doing it get out there. This wasn't a tricky crime to solve after the fact. So, like he said, I thought Jeff did a good job today of just saying unequivocally, like, we take full responsibility for
Yeah.
this.
Very
We're not
remorseful.
going to
Very
feel
emotional.
fine. All we're going to do is work hard, so this isn't what you think of every time you see my name. And that's hard.
Yeah.
That's what he's got to
No,
do.
for sure. It's a little Jetsian, so I don't think all of the Jet stuff kind of
Right?
rubbed off
Yeah.
him just yet going over to
So
Atlanta.
many people got pranked. I'm hearing more
Yeah,
about
right?
again, like if
It's like
if
an
the guy that
epidemic
is
now.
the most high profile guy in the draft gets pranked, I get it, especially if he's kind of polarizing. There are like 5th and 6th round picks, offensive linemen that got pranked. Like,
I know. And they're
how
waiting their
bored
whole
are
life
we?
for this moment. Yeah, they're waiting for their whole life for this
Yeah.
special moment. And after the first prank too, you got to think like, oh, is this legitimately
Right.
is this legitimately a team
Yeah.
calling, or is it someone else? So yeah, it's that needs to get cleaned up by next draft for sure. So talk about the Carolina Panthers. I think did a lot of good stuff with the bundle of picks that they had. Obviously, Tet McMillan in the first round, Lathan Ransom, a safety in the 4th round, I thought was a really good pick. And they also, a lot of doubling up at positions in the NFC South this year, whether it was the Bucs at receiver and corner, the edges that we talked about in Atlanta, and the edges as well for the Panthers. Greg, your overall thoughts about how the Panthers went about their 2025 draft?
Yeah, I thought, again, like there was a time where I would look at mock drafts and I would check each mock draft to see, do they have all 4 NFC South teams taking an edge? Because it was that big of a positional need for everybody. So the fact that the Bucs go 2 and 3, the Falcons take 2 first-round edges, it's not surprising. It's not a good position in this division going in. So I like the draft. I like McMillan. There's this cool, again, obviously Dave Canales spent some time in Tampa, but there's a Florida feel to this draft. I mean,
oh yeah.
Princely's a Gator, Cam Jackson's a Gator, Trevor was a Gator, Jimmy Horn was at USF. So there's local ties. Like I know more late round picks for this draft than just about anybody's. And Ransom is a fun one. I actually know a little bit about him as well. So no, I mean, I think McMillan immediately becomes their best receiver. It's like it's probably not a good thing to put back-to-back first-round picks into receiver, but he has a chance to help them even more than Leggett did last year. That's a big help for Bryce Young in terms of this offense getting to the next level vertically, I think. McMillan's exciting. I mean, again, when there was talk about the Bucs taking him at 19 and ignoring their defensive needs, it's like, wow, I mean, just a great size and speed combo. Again, you don't want to compare anybody to Mike Evans because it's not fair to them.
Yeah.
But again, there's a lot of Drake London in Tet McMillan. That size will translate well. He should be their best receiver from the start. They have very little at edge. So again, the 2 guys they got, at least Scarton was a guy that you saw at the end of the first round, a lot of mocks. So it's good value there. I think they took some injury risks. They got burned by that on Brooks last year, but seemed like a good draft. They're definitely a team that got better in the draft. It'll be neat to see, they're the 3rd place team in this division. They finished ahead of New Orleans. So now it's kind of how much can they put, pressure on Atlanta and become the top challenger to the Bucs in this division.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to ask is can they push Atlanta for that, 2nd spot in the NFC South, which, if you get the 2nd seed in any division, maybe you're in the hunt at the end of the year for a playoff spot.
Yeah, and I feel like, Bryce is ahead of schedule. If the Saints have I guess we're going to have a rookie quarterback there. If the Saints have a rookie quarterback and the Falcons have a guy with 3 career starts, Bryce looks pretty experienced all of a sudden. Yeah. And again, first half of last year didn't look like the guy, but kind of bounced back and finished the season the way you want to. Certainly has better weapons to throw to, a little better protection in front of him. He's going to go. They're going to go like he goes. If he can take a step forward, he can be a 25 touchdown, 8 pick quarterback. Their defense is going to be improved. I don't think they're more than a 7-win, maybe an 8-win team. I mean, that's a great trajectory from where they were 2 years ago.
Yeah, and they just embody the spirit and mentality that Dave Canales has, and I think you kind of saw that in that last game of the season, which would have punched the Bucs playoff ticket anyway, even if they lost to the Saints. But they took care of business, and the Panthers helped them out by beating the Falcons. Speaking of the Saints, rounding it out, a lot of picks as well. Very interesting, especially with their 2nd round pick and their 3rd round pick. But overall, I think some were good. Quincy Riley, that cornerback in the 4th round. Kelvin Banks, certainly their first round pick, helping out that offensive line that certainly needed some adding to. What do you make of what the Saints did? Because to me, it's a little bit all over the place, but obviously want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, a lot of picks. There's some that I like in there. I mean, Stutzman's a guy that, again, a lot of people wondered if the Bucs would take him like around round 3, round 4 as a linebacker match there. I like Jonas Sanker. Shuck's going to be the guy that people talk about. That's going to be kind of what sinks or saves this draft class. Banks, again, they've missed on enough offensive line picks that Banks made sense. It's not really that exciting. It probably puts the Penning experiment on the back burner, I guess.
Yeah.
So Banks, again, there's people that had Banks as maybe the best lineman in this class. And I had thought they might go more offensive playmaker. At that point, McMillan's just off the board. I think both tight ends were still there. It's not like the Saints were a tight end away. So it's not like there was it would have been well received if they used their top pick in a tight end. What they have to show is did they make the right call with Tyler Shuck and getting a guy, who doesn't have nearly the buzz as even the other second tiers, the Milrose, you think about, I think we all in the last week before the draft were told, hey, he could be a late first round pick. He could be a second round pick. With Shuck, the tricky thing is just to look at somebody who's had 7 years of college football, okay? And
barely played.
Largely 7 unremarkable years of college football. It's like his last year at Louisville, he's got a great ratio. He's thrown for yards. He's a winner. But it's not like he's only behind Justin Herbert for 6 years. There's other middling quarterbacks. That third year at Oregon is the COVID year. He gets to play, I think it's 7 games that year. It's a good sample. He gets hurt, half the time. You look at 21, 22, kind of lost those years to injuries. But, I went through, after Shuck got picked, I went through and looked at all draft picks of guys that were 25 when the season started. And in the last 10 years, there's 79 guys that were drafted age 25 or older, okay? And out of 79, the only one made a Pro Bowl ever, okay? Out of all those picks, 79 guys, 1 out of 79, and that's Matt Gay is actually your Pro Bowler. He was 25 with the Bucs as a rookie.
Wow.
And then if you look at quarterbacks drafted, again, he's not the first older quarterback to get drafted high like this. But in the Super Bowl era, okay, the most touchdowns thrown by a rookie quarterback 25 or older is 14. It's probably there for him if he gets a long leash and plays a full season. It's like Brandon Weeden and Chris Winkie. I forget who else I'm missing. There's some Aiden O'Connell is in there too. Okay. It's not something that it's not a position that there's a lot of late bloomers like that at. And for you'll find a Kurt Warner, you'll find stuff like that. But for the most part, for you to have played 6 years of college football, and at no point in that did you think you were good enough to enter the draft after 4 years, after 5 years, after 6 years, there's not really a whole lot of precedent for you being a great, successful NFL quarterback. Still could be. He's doing the right things. It'll be fun to see how he does. I just think the odds are working against him, unfortunately. And for New Orleans, it felt a little weird, especially if Carr's shoulder has complicated things there.
Right.
That's a bad deal that's gotten worse, if you will. But again, the idea that Tyler Shuck is going to be the guy that drags you out of last place in a bad division, I don't know if that's inspired a lot of confidence in Saints fans. We'll see. New coach, where it's going to be some patience with a new head coach and a new offense. Still some talented guys to throw to. Still some skilled position guys
Olave, for
fighting. Sure. If Olave's healthy, if Shaheed's healthy, if those guys can stay on the field healthy, that'll be a better offense. Again, even if he gets, as much as we've dogged Derek Carr, he'll do well to get to the Carr level of passing yards and touchdowns and interceptions. As a rookie quarterback, that can be a tough road. I don't think Rattler won a game last year,
No.
And the Saints have kind of done this thing. I was looking, and I think it's only the 4th time in 20 years that a team has drafted a quarterback in the top 5 rounds 3 years in a row. Mayfield was part of that with like Deshaun Kaiser, Cody Kessler in Cleveland. It's what happens when you keep doing half measures and you throw a 3rd rounder at Jake Haener and a 5th rounder at Spencer Rattler, and it's kind of shopping the bargain bin of rookie quarterbacks. And you do that, hoping there's a Purdy in there or something. and there hasn't been. So this is kind of fishing with the same lure and hoping you're going to get something. I don't know that it will. It'll be a cool story if Tyler Shuck can beat the odds and be the quarterback that Dylan Gabriel isn't and Shilo Sanders isn't and Jalen Milroe isn't. That'll be a story because that's kind of going against the norm and going against the curve. And you want to see that. I just don't know if New Orleans is the place to pull that off right now.
Yeah, it just feels like the Saints just needed to get talent really across the board, especially with some of their like big contracts and expiring contracts and the cap situation that they're in. And then you see the way that I know Jackson Dart went into the first round, but a lot of these quarterbacks, it felt like you could have got them in the third or fourth round. And as it went on, where they could have, maybe helped themselves a little bit better in the second round. I have one last question for you. We'll wrap it back together with a Buccaneers related question. You've been so grateful with your time, Greg, and we really appreciate it.
No problem.
We mentioned earlier in the show, the Bucs did not go with an inside linebacker. And again, understandably so, it wasn't the overall ideal talent pool for inside linebacker. But I want to know your thoughts just for the inside linebackers that they have going into this season. Is it enough for Tampa Bay to get through it? Because Levante, we know he's a legend, still plays at a pretty high level, but has taken a step back just naturally with his age. Servassier, Dennis with the injury history, and then a lot of guys that are on one-year deals that either haven't been here for a long time, like Deion Jones, or are just coming to this team, like Anthony Walker Jr. Can the Bucs get through this season and win games and be successful and go deep into the postseason with the current inside linebacker group that they have?
Can they? Yes, absolutely. If I were to guess a position where they're most likely to add depth between now and the start of training camp, I would start at inside linebacker. To me, it just feels like they're very close to where they were a year ago going into last season. Levante's a year older. So again, it's the fact that he's missed as little as he had and has been as durable as he has. That's not something you want to take for granted. So if anything happened to Levante, they're really hurting at that position. They're counting on Dennis. I think Dennis, you go back to like the Detroit game, there was such a buzz around him. And he definitely looked like something that was going to start taking a huge share of the reps next to Levante. And obviously they lost him. And that honestly was a big part of their defensive struggles for me, was not having coverage in the middle of the field, not having speed in the middle of the field, and everybody they faced knowing that and trying to exploit it. So Anthony Walker is probably a little bit of an upgrade on KJ Britt. They essentially traded spots.
They did, yeah.
Bucs and Dolphins kind of just said, "Do you want?" Okay, well, all right. And they, but I mean, I think Walker's a little bit more high energy. I think he's somebody that Levante knows well and likes. So you have three that, if they're healthy, you're there. There's not a lot of depth to him, like you said. Deion Jones is a guy that has been out of the league for about 2 years. Came in and made some plays late last year when guys were hurt. Deion Jennings is kind of the same way. You got some undrafted types there like Greer and now John Bullock from Nebraska, but none of those feel like more than a fourth linebacker and a special teams guy. They'll make plays there. So there's still a ton of veterans that could be signed, some that have ties to Bowles like CJ Mosley. You look at, I think Kazir White is still unsigned.
That's right.
Even JJ Russell is still sitting out there. And I feel like JJ, it's like you don't want to take a B- and settle for it, but they know what JJ can do. And it's probably a little bit surer things than the undrafted guys they'd be probably rolling with as LB4 right now. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's a guy that's back on the roster. Like they cut 4 guys yesterday just to make room for the UDFAs. And one of them was Daniel Grishik, who had been an outside linebacker. Right. And then it worked as an inside linebacker. So I thought it was intriguing that you have this position of need, and they're barely treading water in terms of a talent standpoint. They lose Britt, they add Walker, and they lose Grishik, and they add an undrafted rookie who's essentially the same kind of player. So no, that's a position where, again, if they found the right match, if there's somebody who used to be asking for $3 million that is content to come in on a veteran minimum deal, this I would think would be a pretty attractive place for a veteran who thinks they can beat out mid-level talent and be a starter in the NFL still. So I think Dennis is probably the main reason for their confidence and their inactivity at linebacker. If he's healthy, it could be a great situation, but I also think knowing Levante's 35, and even though he's back this year, this could be his last year. You'd probably say likely will be his last year. Yeah. That's a position they're going to have to put some resources into very soon just to have what they want on the field 26, whether Levante's there or not.
That is definitely the case. I mean, I hope Levante plays forever, but realistically,
Right.
it does kind of look like it's his last year. And I'm a big fan of Servase Dennis, too. He just can't stay healthy. So I do agree with you. I think J.J. Russell will eventually be in the mix. I can kind of see him being even, you don't hope for injury, but some type of like middle of the season signing if that were the case. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised after there are some roster cuts, after training camp or even right before training camp. Sometimes you see things like that. I could see an inside linebacker coming in. By the way, thank you to our Pewter Platinum members, Scott Federico, Rachel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Hezo813, Ash Fishpool, Joel Elrican, Sam, John Del Morris, Zap Brannigan, RP89, Eric McMillan, Connor For Reals, Zach Jarvis, Kevin Thomas, and Mario Thomas. Thank you all so much for your support being a Pewter Report YouTube channel member and specifically a Platinum member. We appreciate that. Just a reminder for everybody on tomorrow's show, 5th round pick, defensive tackle Elijah Roberts will be joining Scott and I. We'll have a conversation with him about joining the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So we're very much looking forward to that. Greg Auman from Fox Sports, we cannot thank you enough again for joining the show. You can follow Greg at Greg Auman, GregAuman. Greg, thank you so much. Anything you want to plug right now or just, follow your stuff at Fox Sports?
No, not too much. It's kind of post-draft. It's like, everybody kind of lays low post-draft. I'd like to say I have something big going on. Nothing huge in the works next day or two. Everybody's catching their breath and
right.
Getting ready.
Check out the stories Greg just wrote. We put the most recent one in the comments as well. And we'll see you soon. We got defensive coaches and Bucs rookie minicamp. So for Greg Auman, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you soon for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.